These are an excellent opportunity for you to showcase your ability as an investigator. Remember this too. In court, if there is a conflict between something in your notes and something that is written on a report, the judge will probably allow the notes over the report. There is a presumption that the notes are more accurate since they were taken at the scene at the time of the incident. Make sure you safeguard your field notes and keep them stored for at least 5 years in a safe place. How you decide to write your field note is up to you. These tips are offered as a way for you to make sure that your field notes are as good as they should be. After all, this is where the investigation will get its start. First, keep them legible. They're no good if you can't read them. Make sure they are complete. You need more than just the basic facts. Have a system. It can be yours, but you must be able to explain it and use it consistently. Abbreviations are fine as long as you know what they stand for. Stick with simple, commonly used abbreviations, and if in doubt, don't abbreviate. Use all of the space on the page. If you don't, people may accuse you of leaving something out. Develop your own style. It has to be comfortable for you or you won't use it. Don't wait. Write it down right away. Memory fades and eventually fails. Another thing, don't rip pages out. It looks like you're being dishonest. This may come back and haunt you in court. Don't erase an error. Instead, draw a line through it and keep going. Don't make any personal notes in your field notes. They're tough to explain on the stand. Do not put opinions in your field notes, just facts. And finally, review what you write. When you set about the task of trying to describe something to someone else, you have to keep a simple fact in mind. You are trying to tell someone about an object so that they would recognize it from all the other objects of a similar nature in the whole world. You're trying to make it exclusive. In order to make that task work, you have to follow a few simple guidelines. First, be specific. I've never heard a supervisor or an administrator, a lawyer, or even a judge complain that a report that they are reading contained too much detail. There was a case in one situation where a report said that some suspected marijuana had been found in a bowl. The defense attorney started to ask the security officer what kind of bowl he was making reference to in the report. Was it a salad bowl? Was it a cereal bowl? Perhaps he meant a toilet bowl. Well, by the end of his questioning, the people on the jury were clearly starting to wonder if the officer had found anything at all. If he had put in the report that he had found what appeared to be marijuana residue in the bowl of a brown wooden smoking pipe that he had found in the pocket of the suspect, the whole matter would have gone the other way. Be specific about what you're trying to describe. Remember, details matter. Describe what you see and not what you think you see. When you talk to people about witnessing an accident, you will probably soon discover that they are telling you the sequence of events in the order that they assume things must have happened. For example, most people don't actually see a traffic accident. They hear it.
Sir, are you okay?
They hear the crash
Sir, were you
and
injured?
quickly look at the source of the noise just in time to see the vehicles at final rest. Then they look at what is in front of them and put the scene into a sequence of events that is based upon their experience with such things. They could be totally off base in their assumption of what happened. Don't shortcut a description. It may be very easy and quick to describe a piece of jewelry as a gold ring with a diamond in it, but the longer version is probably closer to the real truth. It's a gold-colored ring with a diamond-like stone in it. The difference between the two is 2 words and about $5,000 if it comes up missing later in the case. This relates directly to items 1 and 2. A solid report is going to take as long as it takes to be thorough. When you try to shortcut a description, you're just asking for problems later on. Describing vehicles. The easiest way to remember how to describe a motor vehicle is to use the method that our counterparts in the police field have been using for years. It's called the symbols method. That stands for color, year, make, body style, and license number, and special characteristics such as dents or other distinguishing marks. Always describe a vehicle from the top down. Describing people. There are two basic components when it comes to doing a good job at describing people. We have to consider the things about them that they cannot change and the things about them that they can change easily. Both have to be a part of a complete description, but they are very different. The things about themselves that they cannot change, at least not very easily or quickly, consist of the following. Hair. That includes color, texture, style, and length. Eyes. That refers to the shape, color, slant, clarity, lashes, and eyebrows. 3. Complexion. Includes color, pores, pockmarks, acne, bumps, and facial hair. 4. Gender. Either male or female. 5. Age. 6. Height. This is usually done in comparison with your own height. Approximate height in 2-inch increments. 7. Weight, which most people are not very good at. Group in 10 or 20-pound increments. 8 is build, fat, husky, slim, muscular. 9. Nationality, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, etc. Our format to ensure a complete description is race, sex, age, height, weight, and build. Here's an exercise. Look at the person next to you and write a description. The listing of the things that they can change relatively easily consists of the following. 1. Their shirt. The color, the collar, the sleeve length. 2. Coat. The color, the type, the length, the fabric. 3. Pants. Color, style, fabric. 4. Socks. Color, pattern. 5. Their shoes. The color, the style, the type, the material. 6. Accessories. A sweater, jewelry, watch, bracelet, gloves, etc. 7. Their general appearance. Are they sloppy, neat, clean, dirty, uniform, etc.? If you could concentrate on just one aspect of the physical description of another person, it would have to be what you could see from the neck up. This would include such things as the following. The chin area. Look at the shape to see if it is pointed, rounded, square, small, doubled, or dimpled. The mouth area. Do the corners turn up or are they level? Are the lips full, medium, or thin? The cheekbone area. Are the cheeks high, low, or prominent? Are the cheeks themselves sunken, filled out, dried, oily, wrinkled, or lined in any way? The ear area. Are the ears large or small, flat or protruding? The forehead area. Is the forehead high or low, wide or narrow, smooth or wrinkled? The hair. What is the texture? Is it curly? Is it straight? Long or short? Is it neat or is it unruly? How is it combed? The interrogatories. In a perfect world, the information that you need to put together in an accurate, brief, and clear report would come to you in a logical and clear manner. Unfortunately, we have to operate in the real world. That means that you, as the investigator, are going to have to go out and find the information. You're going to have to look at the scene, the surroundings, the people, and the circumstances in order to figure out what happened and write it down. The best way that we have figured out to do this is to answer the 6 questions that we refer to as the interrogatories. These are who, what, when, where, how, and why. Let's talk about the who. Who reported it? Who is involved? Who is a witness? Who knows what happened? Who was the closest to the incident? Who's the victim? Who was with the victim? Who do you need to talk to? What? What happened? What was the victim doing? What was used to start the incident? What was the sequence of the events? What do we really know about the incident? When? When did it happen? When did they call us? When did it start? When was the property last seen? When were the police called? When was the ambulance called? When did people leave the scene? Where? Where did it actually happen? Where did the victim go? Where did the suspect go? Where were the witnesses when it happened? Where is the evidence now? How? How did the incident happen? How did we find out about it? How did the suspect get in and out? How did the victim get involved? How did the evidence get where it is? The why. Why did the incident happen at all? Why was it reported the way it was? Why did someone leave out information? Why did the incident happen the way it did? Why did it happen where it did? Why did it happen when it did? Why did it happen to this victim? The list of questions under each interrogatory is limited only by your imagination. The incident, the scene, the circumstances, the locations, all of these things and more will help you to make your own list of questions to ask about the event. The more questions you ask, the more information you'll gather. The more information you have, the better the finished report. Time and experience will show you that there are as many different report forms as there are security agencies. The variations on a simple theme can sometimes seem overwhelming, but when you take away all of the fill-in-the-blank forms, checklist forms, and the circle the correct response forms, you're left with the same basic requirement. Someone is going to have to sit down and write the report in a way that makes sense to everyone who reads it. By following some simple rules of report writing, you can make the task much easier. The hardest part about writing a report is getting started. If you've done a thorough job of investigation, you already have the information you need. Now, it's just a matter of putting it down on paper in an accurate, brief, and clear manner. Here's how you start to do that. Rule number 1, write simple. Just because it's going to be an official document doesn't mean that it has to sound like it was written by a team of attorneys. Use short, clear, and accurate words to describe what happened at the scene. It's not a short story, it's a factual report. If a sentence contains more than 22 words, it's probably too long. For instance, don't say a vehicle, say a car, or van, or truck. Be specific, don't say detected, say saw, or smelled, or heard. The purpose of the report is to convey information about an event to someone who was not there to see it. Don't cloud the issue by trying to use fancy words or difficult words. Don't call something a weapon. That could be anything from a nuclear aircraft carrier to a small pocket knife. Be specific. The more concrete and down-to-earth you keep the words, the easier they'll be to read, and the easier they are to spell. Rule number 2, write in the first person. Refer to yourself as I. That way, the reader of the report knows who did what. The infamous method of using the third-person format of calling yourself the investigating officer or the undersigned investigator takes way too long and is much too difficult to read. Don't cover up good security work by hiding it behind a tedious writing style. Besides, you're still going to have to sign the report. We're all going to know who did what anyway. Rule number 3, write in chronological order. Nothing ever happens all at once. Something happens which causes something else, which then causes something else, etc., etc. Your report will make much more sense to the person who reads it if you take the time and the effort to record the events in the order that they occurred. Being chronological will help to place the events at the scene in the proper perspective. It will allow the reader to see the flow of things and will enhance their insight. If the events are scattered all over the report, the person who reads it will have to go back and reread portions in order to understand. When possible, use exact quotes of people from those whom you interviewed. This is important when people make threats, refuse to comply, or admit wrongdoing. Rule number 4, don't use jargon or slang. One of the first things that we all do when we get started in a new endeavor is to make an all-out effort to learn the lingo. This is a fine form of socialization, but it has no place on a security report. Every career has its own unique phrases and words. They do not belong in your reports. The people who read your words may or may not have a similar background. You have to be mindful of the fact that you don't know who is going to read your report when all is said and done. It might go in a file in the office and never be seen again. On the other hand, it might be read by the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. There's no way to know. So, keep the cute stuff out, no 10 codes, no slang expressions, no profanity, unless it's relevant to a case, no locker room language of any kind. Remember, accurate, brief, and clear. Rule number 5, remember the rules of grammar. Sentences need to have a noun and a verb. They must contain an actor and an action. The words you use in place of nouns, called pronouns, must match the word they're being used for in gender and in tense. So, don't say we when you mean us. Don't say I when you mean they. Don't say she when you are describing him. It's also a good idea to try and use a noun as close to the front of the sentence as you can. In other words, get to the point. This is sometimes referred to as writing in an active way instead of a passive one. Remember that a sentence is a group of words that expresses a complete thought. A paragraph is a group of sentences that express a complete idea. When you change topics or ideas, start a new paragraph. The rules are really very simple. As a matter of fact, you learned 99% of what you need to know to write a good report by the time you completed elementary school. Try to become familiar with the report writing style and requirements of your department as quickly as you can. Ask questions and seek clarification on things that confuse you. A security report is a vital part of the job. It's not the kind of thing that can be guessed at or left to chance. Remember, accurate, brief, and clear. Don't get caught in the age-old report writing trap of getting in a hurry to finish the report and go home. It's amazing to see the number of people who can't take the time to do the report properly, but manage to find the time to do the report over. When you're done with the report, proofread what you've written. Someone who writes for a living would laugh at the idea of turning in something after just the first draft. Look over the report with a critical eye. You want to do all that you can to make sure that the report is as error-free as it possibly can be. Look for violations of the 5 C's and make the additions or corrections that are needed to turn the report around. If you're still not sure, ask another security officer to review the report for you. If you happen to be the officer who is asked to review another officer's report, you should take the request as both a compliment and a serious responsibility. Do the best review job that you can. Take the time to read the whole report and offer constructive criticisms. Remember, where this report could possibly go. What kind of job would you want someone else to do for you? That's our program on report writing. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. One of the biggest mistakes that people in our business make when they communicate with one another is that they think of it as an isolated event. Good communication is not an event, it's actually a process. We have to keep in mind that the process involves at least two people. It's not a one-way or one-sided situation. We also have to remember that the main purpose behind communication in the first place is the exchange of information. The process actually looks something like this. First, there's the transmission of an idea. It might be simple or it could be complex, but it's an idea and we have to make sure that we communicate the whole thing. Second, we send the idea via a medium. We can speak it, write it, email it, memo it, letter it, broadcast it. The choices we have to send the idea will only be limited by our resources and our imaginations.
So you're telling me
the
that
message
you did
must
take the
be
wallet.
received. Someone,
Okay. Do you have some
somewhere
identification,
has to
sir?
get the message, or the whole process is pointless.
Okay, thank you.
Fourth,
So you're
once
telling me that you
received,
took this.
the message has to be understood.
Do you have some identification,
Questions
sir?
need to be answered. Fine points may need to be clarified. Fifth, the receiver of the message must send confirmation back that the message was received and understood. This return message is called feedback. To be effective as a communicator, you must make sure that all 5 steps have been followed. If any one step is left out, overlooked, or assumed, we have the beginnings of a communications breakdown. Good communication is just as important to the mission that we perform as security professionals. In addition to the process, we must also be aware that communication runs in channels and in 2 directions. The first channel is the formal one. That consists of such things as orders, procedures, policies, rules, and directives. These are the kinds of communications that run a business. The other type of channel is the informal one. It is sometimes referred to as the grapevine or even the rumor mill. It's interesting to note that the organizations that have a good system for their formal communications do not have a very active grapevine. There's no need, but companies and departments that have a poor system of formal communication seem to have huge and extremely active grapevines. The reason for this is really quite simple. People need to know what's going on in the place where they work. If they cannot find out from the normal channels, they'll make use of whatever information source is available to them. When you spend 1/3 of your life in a setting or location, it helps to know what kinds of things are impacting that place. That should give you some idea of just how important good communication is to the people you work with. When it comes to communication direction, we only have 2 choices at work. Orders, procedures, and personnel information are examples of downward communication. Performance information and clarification information usually flows upward. Let's talk now about communications and courtesy. Common courtesy is becoming so uncommon that you have to wonder how it ever got the name. In the security business, it can mean the difference between a positive contact with a client or a negative one. Being courteous is not something that we should consider as an extra on the job. It's something that should be a part of everything we do as security officers. It is so critical to our image that I'm convinced that it's something that our clients have every right to expect from us. Here are some examples of simple guidelines to follow that will help make you a more courteous officer. First, always introduce yourself by title and name at the start of any contact with a citizen. It's the appropriate thing to do, and it sets a positive and business-like tone early in the conversation. Second, watch your tone of voice. It's usually not what an officer says that gets them into trouble, it's how they say it. Your tone of voice should never betray anger, contempt, sarcasm, or other inflections that are likely to provoke a negative response. Third, be careful with the form of address you use. Citizens and clients should be addressed as Mr. or Mrs., Sir or Ma'am. Don't use first names unless circumstances clearly make that appropriate. Fourth, watch your body language. Stand or sit up straight. Remember that inappropriate body language is easy to see. You can communicate as much as 90% of your message through body language. Make sure that it fits well with the verbal communication. Fifth, There are no circumstances where it's appropriate to use profanity on the job. It's always offensive and always unprofessional. Number 6, never lower yourself to the level of making demeaning remarks about anyone. Remember what your mother told you. If you can't find something nice to say about someone, be quiet. Or, as an old college professor used to say, don't miss an opportunity to shut up. Number 7, take a moment when you can and explain to people why we're doing what we're doing. Often a simple, straightforward explanation about why or what we're doing goes a long way toward getting people to understand and sometimes even help. Number 8, remember, as much as 70% of your time on the job is spent communicating with others. The only way that you can become better at it is to practice. Let's talk now about interpersonal communications. The ability to communicate clearly and concisely is the most important single skill that a security officer can have. The reasons are really quite simple. First, without communication, there is no coordination. Second, without coordination, there's no organization. Third, communication doesn't happen unless some consideration is given to the emotional needs of the recipient. Communications between persons and groups is a rather delicate and involved process that involves a basic understanding of the following factors. First, cultural differences. Second, environmental differences. And third, psychological differences. The processes of communication are the symbols, signs, and means that we use to translate an idea to someone else. First, words are nothing more than symbolic representations of something. Second, words that the recipient of the communication cannot associate with a past experience are meaningless. Third, words are, as a matter of fact, inherently imprecise. Let's talk about understanding the barriers to communication. With all the things there are to get in the way of good communication, it's a wonder that anything gets communicated at all. We as security professionals understand some of the bigger barriers to effective communication, and we can take steps to eliminate the ones we can and work around the ones we can't. The basic barriers to effective communication include the following. First, a failure to listen. Most people listen for the opportunity to say what they want to say. They don't really listen to the person who's talking. Second, status differences. Rank and status make us listen to some people more closely than we listen to others. Third, psychological size. People with take-charge types of personalities get listened to more than those who are normally quiet and reserved. 4, noise. Distractions, sounds, lights, movement, all these things can cause us to lose focus on the speaker. Language barriers can be created by what's called a lack of lucidity. If you're being lucid, you're being easily understood. The problem is that we all speak English. Well, sort of. Don't assume that everything you say is perfectly clear to the receiver. Second, use a little empathy and put yourself in their place. 3, the 500 most commonly used words in the English language have about 14,000 meanings. That's 28 meanings per word. Now, fear of criticism can get in the way too. No one likes to be thought of as missing the point. So, consider this. A positive response, shaking your head up and down in response to a communication, is a way of avoiding criticism for not getting it. Second, it leaves the back door open for a retreat. Nobody likes to be thought of as a little slow on the uptake. Jumping to conclusions is a favorite practice of security officers. Try to wait until you have enough information before making up your mind. Let's talk about filtering. Filtering, which is comparing something to a personal frame of reference, can also cause distortion or dilution of content. We all have a tendency to see things based on our own life experience. We filter and take out what we don't want, and we add the things the way our experience has told us they're supposed to be. Filtering isn't wrong, but it may not be accurate either. Some departments still have a nasty habit of trying to kill the messenger when the communication is not a happy one. When that happens, the organization doesn't get any news for fear that it could be bad. Sometimes the manipulation or suppression of communication is done intentionally. When that happens, it's on the same level as sabotage on a piece of equipment, and it can be very destructive. all communication passes through a system called a communication net. It comes to us from all over the place and must be properly filed and coded. Sometimes these channels of communication can be overloaded. For example, information is jammed up, or some information is just plain lost. Overstructuring communication can cause problems as well. Making the process too formal can create backlogs and missed communication opportunities. Let's turn our attention for a few moments to overcoming some of those communications barriers. Once you know the dangers, you can be about the business of avoiding them. The following is a list of the things you can do to eliminate as many errors and communications barriers as you can. First, determine your objective. Make sure that you know what it is you're trying to say. Be clear about the message and the method. Second, adapt your language and method to the task. You can't effectively communicate all things in the